Hello, and welcome along to the lunchtime stream today. I'm just going to go ahead and jump straight in, basically, because I'm time limited today. So, on Monday night stream, we attempted to do the release of GitReleaseManager with the new features that we are wanting. Hello, Kim, in the chat room. Monday night stream didn't quite go to plan. We did a release, but it wasn't quite right. So there was a 0.10.1 and a 0.10.2 release of GitReleaseManager in order to get it to a point where it's kind of working the way we wanted it to. Hello, Maurice, in the chat room. Thank you for coming along. So it's out there though. So 0.10.2 is the one to be using. There were two bugs that we found that prevented certain things from working. So we wanted to get those fixed up before going any further. So now that release is out, I want to start taking advantage of some of those things in various Cake scripts that I use. So in order to do that, we need to update Cake now to have new aliases for... Oh, Glenn's just joined the chat room as well. Welcome along. Thank you very much for coming. I was just saying that we are going to be working on some updates to Cake. So remember, any other bugs found, it's not bugs, just unknown new features, indeed. So what I've done on the Cake repository is I've added two issues that are associated with the release of GitReleaseManager. So the first is to update the Cake build itself to use the new GitReleaseManager and to make use of the new features such as adding SHAs to the release notes for any assets that are added to the release notes, and also to update any issues with a closing issue saying it was released on this when it's associated with a closed milestone. So all of those things are great that we want to get added into the Cake build itself. And then the other part is updating the alias support within Cake for GitReleaseManager to have knowledge of the new commands that we added, one which was discard and one which was open. And then the kind of, we added, Kim added some additional base options to control logging and the showing or not showing of the logo. So earlier today, just this morning, I started work on this PR. So what I've done is I have refactored the code base to include these three new base options and added tests in for that. And I've also obsoleted the username and password methods that were in the Cake code base. So one of the things that we did in GitReleaseManager was we took the hint from GitHub, and where they are now obsoleting the use of username and passwords for accessing the GitHub API, you now have to use a token. We've updated GitReleaseManager to not allow the usage, or rather, not allow, but strongly encourage the usage of the token rather than username and password. So to that end, it's obsoleted now in GitReleaseManager. We also want to obsolete the Cake aliases that provide that functionality. So I've done that part. So I've done the obsolescence of the aliases, and I've done the addition of the base options. The thing that's left is the adding of the discard and open aliases. But where I thought we would go to during this lunch hour was to update the actual Cake build process itself. So, it is me. I thought there was something behind me, but it's me and my avatar state that was freaking me out there a little bit. So what I thought we would do is we would update the Cake build to not use username and password, and also to update to the latest version of GitReleaseManager, and then also to change the way it works so that it has that additional functionality. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to change this build credentials class. So this build credentials class has a username and password. So we're going to change that to only have a token instead. So let's take these things out, and we'll change this to be a token single instance parameter. We'll change this to token, and we'll change this to token. Great intro. Good, thank you. I'm hoping everyone's on the same page. So we've been working on this for a little bit, Glenn, with regard to the GitReleaseManager release. So it's really, now that that's shipped, it's a case of updating the usage of it to take advantage of it. Because I personally think there's some pretty cool features included in that release, and what we ended up doing with GitReleaseManager is that GitReleaseManager build dog foods the latest build of GitReleaseManager, so it's already got all the new features. So we were able to use those features in GitReleaseManager's build, even though we hadn't shipped it yet. So now that we're doing that and we know that it works, I want to get it in other projects, Cake being the first one, and then that'll trickle down through into the all the Cake contrib add-ins and etc. Once we update cake.recipe to include the latest version of GitReleaseManager. So there's stages, but we'll get there. So one thing I will need to do is I'll need to change the build configuration on appvar, etc. to change that environment variable to be what we want it to be, which is token. Exactly. So the point that Kim's making there in the chat room is that the way that we found out about the bugs that that meant we had a 0.10.1 and a 0.10.2 was that dog fooding actually highlighted those issues, which is good though, because that meant that we caught it before anyone consumed it. So definitely worthwhile doing that. So we've changed the base credentials class that's used as part of the build to only have a token now, and we need to now change where that's used. So I searched for this earlier, but if I search again for where it's used, let's just search for password. Then up in here, we are going to change this usage. So we're going to take out this password usage here, and we're going to switch to just passing in the token, which is going to be here. And then, so this is this part of the code, or this part of the Cake build is where we're doing all the manipulation with GitReleaseManager. So we're adding assets, we are closing the milestone, etc. So, like I say, rather than using the password, we will use the token now. Everything else should remain the same, but we will just pass that in. I've got an extra comma there. I'm going to take the password out here as well, in favor of the token. Good. So we're adding assets, we're closing the milestones, and then here we're creating it. So again, we will remove the parameter, password, and we'll put the token in. Everything else should remain the same. And where else are we using password? So these ones are not related. Store password. What's this one? Oh, we're into fixtures at that point, so we don't want to mess with those because they're not obsoleted yet. So we still want to so we're obsoleting them, but we're not removing them from the code base. So we still need all the fixtures and things to have access to the password and be able to use it. So that's still valid. Where's my mouse? This happened earlier. My mouse disappeared. My mouse cursor disappears. I'm not sure why. Let's put it back in again. So we'll leave the fixture. We will. That's a fixture. We can leave that. That's a fixture. All of those are valid. That's something completely unrelated. And now I think we're into something completely unrelated. So maybe let's refine this search a little bit and see where we are calling GitReleaseManager within our Cake script. So we were doing it here, and we've already added the token. That was a token, that was a token, that was a token, and then that's where we're creating the settings class, which we don't need to worry about, and then the rest we're into, again, fixtures and so on. So I think That's the main one. So that's us switched. So that is us switched the calling of the aliases to use the token versions, which was the first thing that we wanted to achieve. I'd already updated the tool where it actually gets installed. So previously we were running 090, so I've switched it to use 0102. So that's that part done. Now the next part is really about configuration. So we need to add the additional configuration to the GitReleaseManager YAML file in this project to light up some of those features. So I'm going to be really lazy, and I'm going to go over to github.com/gittools/GitReleaseManager, and I'm going to borrow pretty much everything from its GitReleaseManager.yaml file, because it already does it and it's known to work. So the first part of that is this. So I'm going to grab this section here, and I'm going to go and put that in here. And I could, yes, absolutely. So what Kim's suggesting there is, I don't actually know if I've got it installed on here. I do. So here we could run the show config command, and it will list out all of the configuration as it currently stands, including the default values. So what Kim was suggesting there is we can borrow this default, because the default is it's turned off. So really all we need to do is turn it on, and then it wasn't that one, it was the create one. Sorry, it was this section here. We could have borrowed those ones. Oh, hold on. We've got an important message in the chat room here. Want to be famous? Buy followers, primes, and viewers on follow-in bot. No thanks. I'm good. I'm good with my little group that I've got here. I don't need to be famous. I don't need to be famous. So what this is, for those that haven't seen it, if we go back over here and look at releases for GitReleaseManager, if I look at the release that we just created, which was this one, then here. So all of the assets that we add in as part of our release creation, we're now adding the SHA-256 hash of that file, so that people can, if they download it and they want to verify that what they get downloaded is what we uploaded, then the SHA is a perfect mechanism for doing that. So it's one of the things that we now add in as part of the GitReleaseManager cycle. So we want to add that to the cake build. So we've added that in. I don't know how I don't even know how I would enable that. If we can talk about that off stream if we wanted to add that in. Yes, off stream, because I've heard of people being promoted as moderators and things of the chat room to do things like that. So I'm perfectly willing to have you have that permissions. I just have no idea how to do it. So we are including the SHA section. I'm putting this is just the default title. I'm going to put that in, and this is the default formatting, but I'm going to leave those just as the default. Hello, how are you? I was going to say your name, but I'm probably going to say it wrong. But is it Laurent? Is that how we say it? Am I saying that right? Even close? I hope so. Laurent? Is it close? Ah, hey, there we go. Welcome to the stream. It's good to have you here. I don't know about that, but thank you for saying so. So yeah, we're just working on Cake, a little bit of Cake and a little bit of GitReleaseManager today, and kind of moving those two things together. So we've released a new version of GitReleaseManager, and we now want to update Cake to take advantage of some of those new features. The first one here being the addition of the SHAs into the release notes, similar to what we've got here. So any assets that we add into the release, we want to include a SHA-256 hash of the the asset was uploaded so that people can have some reliability that what they are actually downloading from us or getting from somewhere else is the same as what we uploaded. So we're enabling that on the Cake build here just by adding this new YAML configuration. The YAML configuration seems to be off a little bit. Should it not be just indented by 1? Let's put that back over there. And the other configuration that we wanted was the closing. So this is one that I'm particularly happy with, and full credit goes to Kim for adding this in. But what this one does, so again, if we go to GitReleaseManager and look at its latest release, then this issue here, this issue was closed. It was associated with the 10.2 milestone. And when we came around as part of our build to close that milestone, GitReleaseManager now goes and finds all of the closed issues on that milestone. And what it does is it adds a final comment onto the issue so that anyone that subscribed to the issue gets a notification that this thing has just been released. So here we're adding an issue that says this issue has just been resolved in version 10.02, and then you can get this available here. So this is fully customizable via the YAML configuration file. And effectively what this is just doing is providing a way to inform your users that a feature, a bug, or an enhancement has shipped and is now available. So that's what it's all about. There's a couple there's a few other bots and things that do this. But again, for the workflow that I use with GitReleaseManager, having this ability to add this in totally makes sense. So I personally love this feature. So again, we are adding, changing the default. The default for this is to, so Glenn likes it too. Yes. So again, we're changing the default value, which is to enable this. So both of these features we added as not on by default. In future releases, that default might change, but for now, it's an opt-in. So you have to enable both of those. And then again, you have full control over the contents of that issue. So in the context of GitReleaseManager, we provide links to the GitHub release that was created, to the NuGet package, to the Chocolate package, and to the .NET Global tool. So it's going to be very similar for Cake because we also distribute to all of those avenues. We just need to change the text slightly a little bit. So in the case of, and the other thing about the template is that any information that you've already provided to GitReleaseManager, you can make use of in that tokenized issue comment. So you'll see here that the milestone we already know about because this operation is happening as a result of closing the milestone. So we already know what milestone it is, i.e. the version number. We already know the owner and the repository because GitReleaseManager is tied to those two things. So you don't have to provide those things. You get them in a tokenized way. This one we will have to change. So if we go and just confirm what the the main NuGet package for Cake is. So Cake is over here. So it's just nuget.org/packages/cake. So I'm going to change this to be Cake. The Chocolatey package, if we walk over to Chocolatey and find the Cake package, I think it's cake.portable. So cake.portable is here. So it's just packages cake.portable. So again, I will change this to be cake.portable. And the .NET Global tool ships on NuGet. And then that is just cake.tool. It is. So let's change this to be cake.tool. So ta-da! This issue has been resolved in version whatever the milestone is. The release is available on there. GitHub release is github.com/owner/repository releases, tag milestone, nuget.org/packages/cake, chocolate.org/packages/cake.portable, .NET Global tool is cake.tool, and then we'll leave that last part in because it was still the GitReleaseManager bot that did that. So that's that. So let's just have a quick sanity check over here that I haven't missed anything. So there were spaces. That's the only thing that didn't fall over. So I did wonder about that. So let's put a space in there, and then a space in there. That's a good question. You could copy it from the raw file and the enters are gone. Sorry, Maurice, I just saw your comment there. I should have done that, yes. Kim saying, I probably wouldn't have thought of adding this if it hadn't been for the JavaScript application called Semantic Release, which do the same. And I think that's actually where I'd seen it as well. So what Kim's referring to here is a tool that does fully automated version management and package publishing. So I think I'm right in saying that it's more specific about commit messages and how it formulates the release notes based on adhering to those commit messages. Nothing wrong with that. I prefer to maintain it via the milestone, and that's kind of where GitReleaseManager was founded. But absolutely, I had seen it. I'd seen that same functionality from Semantic Release. So then on to the question that Kim's asked. You also got the cake.core CLR application. Now, we do. However, we had a cake meeting. Was it last week? Might have been this week. So looking at the download stats for cake.core CLR, very, very few people are using it. And most likely the only people that are using it are the ones that are using the default execution of the we did have there was no cake, unfortunately. There was no cake, but we did have a cake meeting, and kind of one of the decisions we came to is that going forward our documentation is going to be changing, and where we're going to be talking about full fat .NET framework users of cake, which is cake.exe. And then we will be switching to kind of really only talking about the .NET Global tool for Cake. Now, what that will mean is that we'll still continue to push the Cake.core CLR DLL that you can run just by using .NET CLI and then passing it the DLL. But more and more, I mean, looking at the download stats, let's do that. So even in the last release, there's been 33,000 downloads of the .NET Global tool. There's been 13,000 of the full fat framework version of Cake. And then if you look at .core CLR, you've beaten me to it. 548. So there's a significant drop off when we start talking about the Cake.core CLR. And most likely those downloads are probably coupled almost directly to the usage of it within the VS Code extension. So, yeah, all of that was a lot of words for saying I'm not going to put it in that list because, like I say, our messaging is going to be changing, and we're going to be sticking to, if you're doing some form of full fat framework development that you want to build with, you're going to use the cake.exe. And if you're doing .NET Core development and building, then the recommendation is the .NET Global 2. So that's why I've left it in there like that. So if all of that went well, then if I run a build here, we shouldn't have broken anything. Gary says no. It wasn't just me. It was a mutual decision across the team that spanned who was all on the call. So we had Canadian input, we had Scottish input, we had Swedish input, we had Finnish input, and we had Australian input. So all bases were covered, and we all came to the same conclusion, which was, let's just not talk about Cake.core CLR anymore. But like I say, so begins battle. Well, that might be it. that might be it. I've got nothing to say to that, Glenn. I've got nothing. It was a team decision. Right, so this build's working. So if nothing else, I haven't put in any C# compilation errors with the changes that I've made, because otherwise it would have failed the compilation and it would stop the build. So I don't think I've broken anything. There is no CLI. It's not the tool. But what we did decide is we're not gonna stop publishing it. It'll still be there, so it'll always still be here. And new releases will come out, but we'll just kind of stop talking about it. It's probably the nicest way to put it. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it was Matthias that brought it up. I mean, he's been quite closely following. I mean, even for us, the significant. It's over double the download stats for the .NET Global tool, even compared to the full fat framework version, is significantly higher. So it was 13,000 for the cake.exe, and it's like 33,000. So yeah, over double the downloads. So that kind of it becomes a no-brainer, right? So definitely the metrics help in that situation. So I'm just going to let this build finish, and then assuming that all works, I think that's all I need to do for Cake to start taking advantage of the new features. So we added in, let's have a quick sanity check of the changes that we've done. We've updated the YAML file to have both the create, which includes the addition of the SHAs. We have added the close configuration, which turns on the issue comments, including the links out to those things. We have updated the version of GitReleaseManager to be the next one. And then further down here, what did we do down here? We modified the aliases to use the non-obsoleted aliases that include the token. And then to accommodate for that, we changed the credentials class to only have a token rather than bringing in both the username and the password. And what I have to remember is that I need to change our CI definitions to not have those environment variables, or to not have those to not have those environment variables, but rather use a token instead. And Kim's saying Cake.core CLR is mostly used with Cake.bakery though, right? Or we use, or can it? So the whole concept of the Cake.core CLR predated the whole concept of the .NET Global tool. So it was a mechanism to run a Cake script using the .NET CLI before the .NET tooling came along to support the .NET Global tools. So when we added it into Cake.bakery initially within VS Code, we did it by shelling out to .NET Cake.core CLR DLL. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to change the default now to kind of assume that the .NET Global tool is there rather than downloading the Cake.core CLR DLL into the add-ins folder. So it's mainly just an evolution of how the .NET CLI tooling has evolved. And it's just going to fade away. So that we don't directly reference Cake.core CLR in any product. No, we don't. Hey, Spyboot. Good to have you again. We are currently building some stuff with more about. I can't remember if you were on the Monday show, but we shipped a version of GitReleaseManager on Monday, and then we had a follow-up release on Tuesday because there was a bug. And there might have been another one after that because there was another bug, but it's fine. It's fine. So GitReleaseManager is shipped. So now what we're doing is we're updating Cake to take advantage of that new tooling. So the issue that I'm working on just now is 2697. So I'm going to commit these changes. I've already forgotten what that number was. 2697? 2697. So we will put in a message here that is update to latest GRM. Excuse me. Update tool preprocessor directive to directory to use 0.10.2. Also switch away from using username password version of GRM cake aliases in favor of token version. And what do we do finally? And that was it, wasn't it? On finally added YAML configuration to enable new GRM features. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and commit that. So I spent all week writing and optimizing GLSL code, fighting garbage collectors, and trying to get rendering loops allocation free in JavaScript. That sounds like an amazing weekend, or amazing week. Did you get to the bottom of it? So with those things done, we can now start looking at adding the additional alias. What time is it? We might be able to get at least one. So within the Cake code base, let's just start there. So within Cake, there's the concept of cake.common. So cake.common contains all of the, funnily enough, the common things across the Cake code bases. One of those are the tools that are supported. And within here, there is GitReleaseManager. So all of these tools ship in the box within Cake. So whenever we publish Cake, we're also shipping support for Chocolate, for DocCover, for MS Build, MSpec, all of these things. And GitReleaseManager is one of the things that ships in the box with Cake. So we have support at the minute for all of the commands. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 commands that we support in Cake. So we need to add two new commands that were added to GitReleaseManager. One of which is the open command, which reopens a closed milestone, and the other one is to add support for the discard command, which discards a created alias that discards a created release that isn't yet published. And Spyboot is saying, I went pretty far down the rabbit hole investigating V8 internals. Oh, that sounds like a whole world of fun. So it's a box of chocolatey cake and more. Yes, Marisa, it is. Now, it has been pointed out a number of times that I do seem to only get involved in cake or food-related projects of the open source variety. That got even worse when I submitted a couple of PRs into Test Kitchen or Just Kitchen. So I now have a kitchen full of chocolatey cake OSS projects. I don't know why I do it to myself. Well, chef, but yeah. So kitchen is under the chef umbrella. So it's I'm not doing myself any favors. I'm really not. Also, I'm convinced Google can have it. Most 2 to 3 developers who still really know how that fits together. That's not a good situation to be in. That's really not. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to copy. Don't ever do this. Don't ever do this. I'm going to copy the 2 classes that are here for the close, because the open command is essentially the mirror the mirror command to the close. So I'm going to copy those two, and I'm going to put them in here. And then I'm obviously going to rename them to be open and rather than close. And I'm going to say no to that because that might try and inadvertently rename the other ones. So let's not do that. And then rather than being the closer, this is going to be the opener. Look at me making up words. It's great. I don't suppose you got something with pans and casseroles as well. Not yet. Not yet. That's going on to our Gary system. No, don't ever do this. Just don't. I've missed object-oriented land file names. Hit me with those departure table builder settings factory bean. Right, so I'm in this one. So let's change this namespace to be open. Oh man, let's get that other one open so we can make some of these changes at the same time. So one thing I noticed when I was doing some of the refactoring of this section of the Cake code base, it's totally my fault, it's absolutely my fault, is there's actually very little, there are no specific settings for the opening of a milestone. They all kind of just live in this, the settings that are common are just in the base class. So this class is not actually needed. There was some, it's the complete opposite of the whole premature optimization that you can do. It was created for the sheer hell of it, I think. So it's not needed, but rather than delete them all because people will be using them, I've extended the problem further is what I've done. But I'm okay with that. It's done now. I'm just gonna have to do it. I'm gonna stick with it. So the whole point of what we're doing here is we are trying to create the Cake alias, which will allow us to open a milestone. So there already was one for close, and at this point I am just copying and pasting. Although I'm not even doing that. I am replacing the word close with open, and I'm trying to figure out why that isn't working. Because there's another one here. So we need this to be open. Okay, so that one should now fix that one. It did. And then this is going to be changed to the opener. But all of this should, we need to change that there too. Opener, beautiful. And this method is going to be open creates. Oh, that's just wrong. Hold on. That doesn't do what it says it does. Creates a release. No, it doesn't. This says closes a milestone. Interesting. That documentation was wrong. Let's fix that. Closes a milestone using the specified settings. Almost certainly was, and it wasn't picked up during the PR review, which is unfortunate. But I mean, these things happen. But we will leave this code base slightly tidier than we came into it, which is good. So this is not going to be creates a milestone. This is going to be opens a milestone. That's nowhere close to being milestone. Let's try that again. Opens a milestone using the specified settings. And then we've got another one here that is, oh no, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. So, yeah, this one we don't actually want. So for the new aliases, we're not going to provide username and password support at all. So I made that decision earlier today. It's like, there's no point in putting in an alias that we're immediately going to obsolete. So this is a new alias that's going in. So it's only going to have the token parameter, not the username and password one. So I made that decision earlier. So this one is going to be open again. So token, owner, repository, all of those things seem okay. That needs to be here with the open. Now, this parse common arguments was required. Oh, that's the username and password one, so that can come out. We don't need that one. That leaves only the token one, which needs to be open. Open. This method here, parse common arguments, was required because we had two streams. We had username and password, and we had token. So we split out the parsing of those arguments that are common between those two, so there wasn't duplicated code. So now we can bring that back in because, well, we don't have those two streams anymore. So let's take that out. Shoot, Spyboot, feel free. Ask away. And then this wants to be open. Blah blah blah. If you put all those arguments you check into a temp array and iterated over them instead of writing all that out, would it get unrolled by the compiler, and would that be easier? I could not go back to programming like this. So if you put all those arguments you check into a temp array, that is a different story, Kim. Absolutely, and that occurred to me as I was refactoring the base settings. But that's, yes, I don't disagree. So I honestly can't comment. I'm a C# developer. I know very little about the functional programming paradigms and how you would better do things in that land. Is there better ways of doing this? Almost certainly. From a pragmatic point of view, I tend to look at things and think, well, does it work? And this is known to work. So from that point of view, that's the way I roll. Is there optimizations that could be made? Almost certainly. But it's readable. In my opinion, it's readable. So I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna say open here. I'm gonna look at close to see what we're doing. So this becomes open. And then oh no, I see what you're saying. No, sorry, I didn't take it that way. If you put all those arguments you check into a temp array and iterated over them instead of writing it all out. So maybes, I mean, so in this scenario, we're not doing anything that would necessitate obfuscation of the generated arguments. But in some scenarios, when you're passing in where we were doing before, we were passing in the username and password. Cake has the ability to append that to the argument stream, the outgoing argument stream, but it will redact that password when it gets written out to the log. So there's things like that would need to be taken into consideration. We wouldn't have done this until they got lambdas. It would probably be easier to save them in a dictionary than an array. That's true. But yeah, possibly. I mean, there's where I am right now is that I want to write this code in the style of the rest of the repository. So any refactoring like what you're describing would need to be done across all the aliases. So that's not to say that we won't do it, but where we are right now is we are doing an additive addition. So I'm happy to make changes to documentation elsewhere in the code base to fix the code base. But in terms of keeping the aliases in sync, if you like, we're not talking about a refactoring of the way that they're doing them at the minute. This is your friend. Maurice. Okay, well remembered. So that, I think, is that one done. So let me just have a quick sanity check. So we create the GitReleaseManager milestone opener, which we've got here. That takes a bunch of inputs, although I don't think we need this anymore. Oh no, the base class needs it, so we have to keep that in. We're creating an open command, which takes in a token, not the username and password, takes all the other things in, along with the settings class. The settings class, in our case, has all of the base things in it. And the base things include the new debug, verbose, no logo, target directory, etc., etc. Is this hobby or work or both? A little bit of both. A little bit of both. So, I make So I'm one of the maintainers of the Cake project, and I'm one of the maintainers of the GitReleaseManager project. So both of those are open source projects that we make use of in open source land. But there is an increasing desire to have the usage of Cake and GitReleaseManager for my work. So one of the things that we did in this last release was a lot of refactoring of GitReleaseManager to make it support, or rather, to allow it to support source code locations other than GitHub, i.e. GitLab. So there is a desire within work to have ability to use this functionality on GitLab repositories and not just GitHub. So very much doing both work and open source stuff, which is what I did for Kitoko. But that was... Hold on, let's Kim put into here. What was he doing with his runner? Dun, 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 dun. I saw this, actually. I saw that you were doing stuff with this. Which is what I did with Kate Cove, but this was mostly to make it easier to extend. And Spyboot saying that they forced their projects on work too. Forced, yes. Suggest, definitely. But anyway, so let's finish off where I was, because I've now got less minutes. So I've got 12 minutes. So the open requires a token, owner, repository, and milestone, and then the potential options for the base arguments. So that's all we need. So I think that's that one done. The settings... No, that's not the one that we're in. It was this one, the opener. The settings are just a settings class. Again, that's not strictly needed, but to be consistent with how the other ones work, I'm going to leave that the way it is. So the discard is the mirror command to the create. So again, don't ever do this. I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to put them in here. Don't do these. Don't do this ever. And then I'm going to change this to be discard, and then I'm going to make up another word that is the discarder. Love it. So I'm going to create the discarder. There we go. I love making up words. So let's close off some of these so I can see where we're at. So I'm going to close all documents. Let's open up the discard settings, and that's going to be a new namespace that's called discard. I'm going to get the spelling of the creator right. Discard, is it discard or discard er? I went with er. Discarder. Yeah, I think that sounds right. 8:50 Friday. Oh, it is Friday, isn't it? We're at the end of the week already. I honestly don't know how that happened. Discard, GitReleaseManager settings, discard, GitReleaseManager discarder. So when it comes to that, I might have to go and look at the documentation a second. So GitHub /git tools, git release manager. So we go and have a look at the documentation, and we look at the command for discard. What does it actually need? It just needs the milestone. So it has a milestone property. So we don't need the name then, so we can take that one out. And input file path. We don't have an input file path because we are not creating the release. Whether or not it's a pre-release, it doesn't matter. We're not adding any assets because that's part of the creation process, and the target commit-ish is, so it's just a milestone. Gets or sets the milestone to be used when discarding the release. Okay, so it's just got one additional property. Don't need this namespace anymore. So let's have a look at the discarder. This needs to be in the same namespace. Discard. This is going to be the discarder of that. I love just making up words. It's great. Discard settings. Let's copy that and stick that on there. GitReleaseManager discarder. Takes in all of those things, does some stuff with them. Again, the create was split into username and password and token. So we'll take out the hold on, what's going on here? That was off a little bit. So Glenn was saying it's 10 to 9. The spy boot is must be an hour ahead of me. Oh, you were in Belgium, is that right? Have I got that right? Do I remember that correctly? I want a reference counter like that. RNA voice. I am the discardinator. Get to this. Oh, I thought. I knew it was a B. No disrespect to anyone in Belgium, obviously, but I knew it was something like that. So discard settings is that, and then we're going to, rather than creates a release, we're going to be discards a release using the specified. Using the specified and settings. That makes no sense. Discards a release using the specified settings. That's something else I'm going to go and change over here. Discards, creates a release using the specified and settings. Really? My goodness. This is totally my code. I wrote this. I'm going to have to see that's out of sync as well. What's going on there? Much strangeness going on there. Okay. So I think we fixed that one. So this is not a create method anymore. This is a discard, takes a token, and the discard settings. We decided that the token is needed, the owner is needed, the repository is needed, the settings, and then we get the arguments using the settings. This one was for the username and password. Take that one out. This is going to be just with the token. That needs to be changed to be discard token parse common arguments. We don't need that anymore. So we decided that we don't want the target commit-ish. We don't want the assets. We don't want the pre-release. We don't want the input file. The N is the name. Milestone we need. So these ones. So if I take those out and put them in here, we can remove the common arguments. Oops, too many. Then we'll add the base ones. So we've got discard, tokens, owner repository, milestone, which is the required parameter, and then the other ones are the base arguments. And if I do a quick search in here for create, the GitReleaseManager release discarder use to discard aliases. Love it. And then there's nothing left. Okay, cool. Don't need this environment because we're not doing anything with that anymore, which means we don't need to put it into the overload. We'll just pass it down to the base class. Discard. Yada, yada, yada. Getting the arguments. Okay, good. Question. If milestone is a required parameter, why is the logic in an if block? Because oh, I see. Hold on. I see what you're saying. So it looks as though, or no, if I cast my mind back to the create, so the create can either take a milestone or a name or a tag for deciding how to create it. So rather than create multiple aliases for the create, the non-required required parameters went into the settings class. So no, you're right. In this scenario, we would want to put the milestone as a parameter here rather than putting it into the settings. So that would mean that we would go into here and we would take this out, and this becomes a useless class that's really just for naming. So we would put the milestone there, and we would not do that as that. So this would be builder.append, and that would be -m, and then we could borrow that rather than me typing it, and we could put the milestone here, and then we would do this, and we would put a thing in here instead that says, if you don't give me it, I'm going to throw you an argument. And in that case, the settings class should be allowed to be null. Yes. But that will be handled in the alias. So that will flow upwards. But if we go up to here, then there'll be a top level alias. So that is just the discard method. So the discard will always take a setting, but the alias will either take a setting or not, and it will pass in a new settings class if it's passed in as a null. We haven't got to that part yet. But we are putting in the milestone. So we'll need to add in a new parameter here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be milestone, and helpfully that's going to be the milestone. Look at that. So that was a good catch. Thank you for that, Glenn. Appreciate it. Blah 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 blah. And why are you moaning? What are you moaning about? Oh, because I've not actually passed it in. So this is going to be string milestone. And then we need to put the milestone in here too. This is why I love pair coding, and this is why I like streaming, because input from all the places, and it is -m. Yes, -m rather than. Okay, cool. So that, I think. I'm going to say it. I think all of this is going to compile, obviously, because it's going to compile. Maybes. And then what we need to do now, and we won't have time for today because it's already 1 o'clock. we need to write test cases. So the other thing that Cake has, if we drill down into the cake.com.tests and we look at the unit tests and we look for tools and we look in GitReleaseManager, then there's a whole suite of tests that go through to verify that what the expected output of all the arguments parsing results in an actual command that will work. So if we look at how the create alias does that, then we have aliases in here for should throw if the username is null. So some of these won't be applicable because we won't have that. But if we scroll down here, then an example would be that was a bad example. Should add no logo to arguments if set. So if within the fixture that we're testing, we set the no logo property to be true, then the expectation is that what the generated arguments look like is a fully declared thing that has everything contained within it, including the no logo parameter that is set for us. So we're going to need to create a suite of unit tests for the discard and for the open aliases, or it's not even an alias, it's wrong to call it an alias at this point. The open and the discard methods. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to update the aliases class to include calling those methods when we're actually making use of them. So build tests first. So I felt that in terms of a stream, I felt that seeing someone write tests is, I don't know. I chose to do the implementation first. But yeah, as Kim's pointing out, if you're doing TDD, then that's how you would do it. I don't necessarily adhere to that, but I do go and fix the code if my tests that I write then break. It really just comes down to how you want to do it. I could have written the test before the stream, but I did the refactoring before the stream, and then I went to do some actual work. So I wanted to get ahead of the curve a little bit, but I also had work to do. So, AI-driven development. So that's what's left to do. I need to write the tests for those two methods. And if all of that gets done, I'll be able to submit a PR. And then in the next release of Cake, which is 0.37.0, we can then update cake.recipe. That's the other thing that people, recipes, cakes, chocolatey. We'll be able to update cake.recipe to utilize the new version of Cake. Maybe other reasons why that might not work. Then we can pull cake.recipe back into GitReleaseManager to then update GitReleaseManager's integration test to no longer fake out the usage of those aliases, but rather use the actual ones. And then I'm finally going to get back to the chocolatey VS Code extension that has been sitting on the back burner for a long time. And if I can get to there, then stream on Monday night will be first of all, we'll need to refactor that project. Right now, we have repositories that live under my GitHub account. The first thing I want to do is I want to move those to the appropriate GitHub organization. And if I can get all those moved around, we have some refactoring to do, because right now we have a language server for chocolatey that lives within the VS Code extension repository. I want to break that out so that the language server implementation is in its own repository, submit that as a NuGet package to NuGet.org, and then consume that within the VS Code extension and the Visual Studio extension that we're creating for chocolatey. So we split that code out, and then we've got a ton of work that was done by Kim and by Maurice and myself months ago, where we're actually allowing the within VS Code sanity checking of the new spec file, and to an extent some of the PowerShell files, if I remember, so that you actually get little squigglies in VS Code when you've got something wrong within those new spec files or associated chocolate files as you're creating your chocolate packages. Almost a year ago. It really probably is. It probably is. New cake. VS Code extension, yes. Good idea to split the repos out. Some pain I went through. Same pain I went through. Yeah, I mean, it's as we started out, when we started this out, the C# implementation of the language server protocol that we're using, it didn't work for Visual Studio, but then Martin and Tinboy and David Driscoll did some updates to the C# language server implementation protocol that means that it then would work in Visual Studio. So originally it was kind of only ever going to envision to be Visual Studio Code, but then because it works in Visual Studio, we then thought, oh, we as well creating a Visual Studio extension for Chocolatey as well, and hence we need to break it out. March 2019. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're going to get back to that. And hopefully we'll get back to that on Monday night stream. So that's the plan. For now, I'm done. Thank you all for joining. Do appreciate it. Oh, tangent. You seen the OmniSharp LSP library? Yes, so that's what I'm talking about. So we were using. So I know that Tyler's jumped on that, and he's now he did a ton of work to get the OmniSharp LSP library working for the PowerShell extension. So we're using the exact same one. It's the I maybe never said the OmniSharp one, but it's certainly David Driscoll's implementation of that is the one that we're using. Yes, absolutely. And I know they've done a ton of work bringing that up to snuff. And we're using an old version, so that's one of the things we'll have to do as well, is to pull in the most recent one. So no, that's absolutely the one we've been using. So that's the plan. So that's Monday night. So thank you all for coming, and Maurice, thank you very much for the cheer. Appreciate it. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go and grab a quick bite to lunch, and then I'm going to go back to work. So have a good evening and good weekend, everyone, and we shall talk to you all later. Thank you very much.